Get on the floor, now! FBI, hands where I can see them! The faux tactical boot kicked through the solid mahogany door, shattering the quiet Sunday evening. Marcus Bell didn't flinch. He just looked at the masked man pointing a cheap Glock at his chest, then glanced at his wife, then his son. A silent, calculating conversation passed between them. They were staring at a terribly dressed imposter, because Marcus Bell wasn't just the homeowner. He was the supervisory special agent of the real FBI's Washington field office. Jordan Scott was a man whose ambition vastly outweighed his intellect. Sitting in the back of a rented, unmarked white cargo van, idling in a strip mall parking lot in Silver Spring, Maryland, he adjusted the Velcro straps on his black tactical vest. The vest, purchased from a sketchy online military surplus store, had FBI emblazoned across the front and back in bold yellow stenciled letters. It was a good fake. Good enough, he figured, to terrify a rich suburban family into handing over the contents of their safe. Jordan wasn't a master criminal. He was a desperate grifter drowning in debt, surrounded by 3 equally desperate accomplices. Mike, a bouncer with anger issues, Leo, a petty thief who claimed to know how to crack safes, and Trey, the nervous getaway driver. Their plan was audacious but simple: impersonate a federal raid, breach a wealthy home, claim they were seizing assets under a federal warrant, empty the safe, and vanish before the victims even thought to call the real police. They had targeted a sprawling neo-colonial house in the affluent neighborhood of Chevy Chase. According to Leo's questionable underworld intel, the homeowner was a high-level corporate executive who kept untraceable cash and gold in a hidden wall safe. What Leo's intel failed to uncover, however, was the homeowner's actual profession. 10 miles away, in the very house Jordan's crew was currently drooling over, the Bell family was enjoying a rare, quiet Sunday dinner. The aroma of roasted rosemary chicken and garlic potatoes filled the spacious, warmly lit dining room. Marcus Bell sat at the head of the table. At 52, Marcus possessed the quiet, imposing stillness of a man who had spent 25 years navigating the darkest corners of human nature. He was a supervisory special agent attached to the FBI's Washington field office, WFO, specifically commanding the Violent Crimes Task Force. To his right sat his wife, Sarah. Elegant and sharp-witted, Sarah was not a civilian. She was a senior forensic accountant for the FBI's cyber division, a woman who hunted international money launderers by tracking digital footprints across the globe. To Marcus's left was their 24-year-old son, David. David was fresh out of the FBI Academy at Quantico, having graduated in the top percentile of his class just 3 weeks prior. He was currently sporting a buzz cut and the undeniable, restless energy of a rookie agent eager to prove himself. So the behavioral science guys are still using the same outdated profiling models for the practical exams? Marcus asked, taking a sip of his Cabernet, his deep baritone voice rumbling in the quiet room. David grinned, tearing off a piece of bread. Yeah, Dad, they haven't updated the serial arsonist module since 2005. I pointed it out to the instructor. He wasn't thrilled. Sarah chuckled, reaching out to squeeze her son's arm. You inherited your father's absolute inability to let authority figures be wrong, David. It's a miracle they didn't wash you out on insubordination alone. The atmosphere was light, steeped in the deep, unspoken bond of a family forged in law enforcement. They spoke in acronyms and procedural shorthand, a private language of federal service. They were completely unaware that a van full of armed amateurs was currently turning onto their tree-lined street, fully intending to bring chaos into their sanctuary. But the Bells were not regular people, and their home was not a regular house. It was fortified, monitored, and currently occupied by nearly 80 years of combined federal tactical and investigative experience. The white cargo van rolled to a slow stop halfway down the block from the Bell residence. The street was quiet, bathed in the amber glow of old-fashioned street lamps. The houses here sat far back from the road, insulated by manicured lawns and thick oak trees. "All right, listen up," Jordan growled, turning to face his crew in the dim, cramped back of the van. He pulled a black balaclava over his head, leaving only his eyes exposed. "We hit it fast, we hit it hard. Shock and awe. We are the federal government tonight. Understand? You yell FBI until your throat bleeds. You don't let them think. You don't let them breathe. We get in, secure the perimeter. Leo finds the safe. We bag the cash, and we're ghosts in under 5 minutes." Mike racked the slide of his shotgun, a pump-action Mossberg. What if they fight back? They're rich suburbanites, Jordan sneered, checking the magazine of his own weapon, an unregistered Glock 19. They don't fight back, they cower. Just point the barrel, scream in their faces, and they'll do whatever you want. Let's move. The side door of the van slid open, and the four men stepped out into the cool night air. They moved in a clumsy single-file line toward the Bell property. They thought they looked like a seasoned tactical unit. To a trained eye, however, they looked like a disaster waiting to happen. Their spacing was wrong. Their muzzles were pointed at each other's backs. Their footsteps crunched loudly on the gravel driveway. Inside the house, the atmosphere shifted instantly. Marcus was in the middle of a story about a botched sting operation in the 90s when his phone, resting on the table, vibrated softly. Simultaneously, a discreet, chime-like sound echoed from a small wall-mounted panel near the kitchen. It wasn't a standard ADT alarm. It was a proprietary, high-grade perimeter alert system installed by bureau technicians. Marcus stopped mid-sentence. His eyes darted to the panel. Sarah set her wineglass down, her posture instantly straightening. David froze, his hand hovering over his plate. The casual dinner banter vanished, replaced by an electrifying, icy silence. Marcus pulled his phone toward him, tapping the screen to access the exterior camera feeds. The high-definition, infrared cameras painted a clear picture. 4 figures dressed in mismatched tactical gear moving up the driveway toward the front porch. They were carrying long guns and handguns. "We have company," Marcus said, his voice dropping an octave, devoid of any panic. It was the voice he used when briefing a SWAT team. Sarah leaned over to look at the screen. Her eyes narrowed as she zoomed in on the lead figure. They're wearing tactical vests, yellow lettering. It says FBI. David leaned in, his young face tight. Hostile entry. Are they cartel? Retaliation? Marcus studied the screen for another 3 seconds, his trained eyes instantly dissecting the threat. "No," he said softly, a dark, dangerous amusement flickering in his eyes. "Look at their footwork. Look at how the guy in the back is holding that shotgun. He's flagging his own team. And that FBI font on the vests? It's aerial. The Bureau uses a specific proprietary stencil. These guys aren't cartel, and they sure as hell aren't us. They're grifters, home invaders playing dress-up." "They're about to breach," David noted, his hand instinctively reaching for the small of his back, where his newly issued service weapon was holstered. "Stand down, David," Marcus ordered quietly, slipping his own phone into his pocket. "Let them in." David looked at his father, shocked. "Let them in? Dad, they're armed. If we shoot them on the porch, it's a messy shootout in a residential neighborhood," Marcus explained, his mind working at light speed, calculating the tactical geometry of the room. "They think they're raiding a soft target. We have the element of total surprise. We let them breach, we let them funnel into the foyer, we contain them, and we dismantle them." Sarah hit the silent. Sarah calmly reached under the edge of the dining table and pressed a hidden panic button. It didn't trigger a siren. Instead, it sent an encrypted Priority 1 distress signal directly to the WFO's Tactical Operations Center, bypassing local 911 entirely. The real cavalry was already being scrambled. "Play terrified," Marcus commanded, his face hardening into a mask of pure focus. "Keep your hands visible. Let them talk. Let them commit every single felony on the books. When I give the word, we move." Crack. The sound of the battering ram hitting the solid mahogany front door echoed through the house like a cannon shot. The heavy wood splintered and groaned, but the reinforced deadbolt held on the first strike. "Harder, you idiot!" Jordan's muffled voice screamed from the porch. Crack! Smash! The doorframe gave way in a shower of wood splinters and drywall dust. The door flew open, slamming against the interior wall with a deafening bang. "FBI, get on the ground! Everybody on the ground now!" Jordan roared, storming into the foyer. His Glock swept aggressively from side to side. Behind him, Mike and Leo piled in, their weapons raised, screaming a chaotic chorus of profanities and conflicting orders. "Hands where I can see them! Face the floor!" Marcus, Sarah, and David played their parts flawlessly. They knocked their chairs back, dropping to the floor of the dining room, hands raised high above their heads, faces etched with faux terror. Jordan marched into the dining room, his boots crunching on a broken plate that had fallen from the table. He felt a surge of euphoric power. It was working. The wealthy executive was cowering on the floor, exactly as planned. The illusion was holding. "Who else is in the house?" Jordan screamed, pointing his gun directly at Marcus's head. "Nobody," Marcus stammered, injecting a perfect tremor of fear into his voice. "Just my family. Please don't hurt us. What is this about? We haven't done anything." "Shut up!" Mike yelled, stepping forward and racking the shotgun again for dramatic effect. "We're asking the questions. Federal warrants, scumbag. We're seizing your assets. Where's the safe?" Sarah, kneeling beside her husband, let out a convincing sob. "Please, just take whatever you want. The jewelry is upstairs in the master bedroom." "I don't want your wife's pearls, pal," Jordan sneered, stepping closer to Marcus, looming over him. He felt like a god. "I want the wall safe in the study. I know about the cash. Get up. Slowly. You're going to open it for me." As Jordan stood over Marcus, Marcus was doing what he had done for 2 decades, gathering intelligence. From his position on the floor, Marcus noted the cheap plastic fabric of Jordan's tactical pants. He smelled the stale beer on the breath of the man with the shotgun. He saw that the safety on Jordan's Glock was actually engaged, and the man's finger was wrapped tightly around the trigger guard, not the trigger itself, a rookie mistake born of nervousness. David, kneeling a few feet away, was silently exchanging glances with his father. David had marked the positions of the 3 visible intruders. He knew his mother had a clear path to the kitchen island, where she kept a customized Sig Sauer P365 magnetically mounted under the counter. I'll take you to the safe," Marcus said, slowly rising to his knees, keeping his hands high. "Just please lower the weapons. You're terrifying my wife." "Move!" Jordan shoved Marcus in the shoulder. Marcus stood up, his towering 6'2" frame suddenly casting a long shadow over Jordan. For a split second, Jordan felt a strange, primal flutter of unease. The man he was pointing a gun at didn't move like a terrified civilian. He moved with a heavy, rooted grace, but the adrenaline washed the doubt away. "Lead the way," Jordan barked. "Before we go," Marcus said, his voice subtly dropping the terrified tremor, returning to its natural, authoritative gravel. "Under what statutory authority are you conducting this raid? Title 18. Section what?" Jordan blinked behind his mask, momentarily thrown off balance. "What? Shut up and walk." "Because if you're executing a federal seizure, you should have presented a signed warrant from a federal magistrate," Marcus continued calmly, his eyes locking onto Jordan's. "And your entry protocol was, frankly, embarrassing. You didn't secure the perimeter, you didn't check your corners, and your point man has his safety on." The room went dead silent. The fake cops froze, entirely unable to process what was happening. The dynamic of the room had just violently inverted. "What the hell are you talking about?" Mike yelled, stepping forward with a shotgun. "He's talking about the fact that you just committed a textbook violation of Title 18 U.S.C. Section 912, impersonating an officer of the United States." David spoke up, his voice sharp and confident as he slowly rose from his knees. "Coupled with armed home invasion, aggravated assault, and conspiracy." Jordan felt a cold sweat break out on the back of his neck. His brain scrambled to understand why the victims were suddenly reading him federal statutes. He aimed his gun tighter on Marcus. "I said shut up! I'll blow your head off." "No, you won't," Marcus said softly. And then the Bell family went to work. The takedown was a symphony of trained kinetic violence over an exactly 3.4 seconds. Marcus moved first. He didn't flinch away from Jordan's gun. He stepped into it. With terrifying speed, Marcus's left hand shot out, grabbing the slide of Jordan's Glock and forcing it violently outward, away from his body, simultaneously preventing the slide from cycling. In the same fraction of a second, Marcus drove his right palm in a devastating upward strike into the center of Jordan's chest, right where the cheap tactical vest offered zero protection. Jordan's breath exploded from his lungs in a wet gasp. As he stumbled backward, Marcus twisted the Glock from his weakened grip, spun the weapon around and aimed it directly at the bridge of Jordan's nose. Simultaneously, David exploded from his kneeling position. He lunged at Mike, the man with the shotgun. David didn't go for the gun. He went for the man's center of gravity. He executed a flawless textbook leg sweep, dropping the massive bouncer hard onto the hardwood floor. Before Mike could even register the impact, David had his knee planted firmly into the man's throat, his own service weapon drawn and pressed against Mike's temple. Leo, the third intruder, panicked. Seeing his 2 partners neutralized in the blink of an eye, he let out a high-pitched yell and raised his handgun toward David. "Drop it!" A sharp, commanding female voice rang out. Leo froze. Sarah was standing perfectly still behind the kitchen island. In her hands, held in a flawless isosceles stance, was her Sig Sauer. The weapon's laser sight painted a bright red dot directly between Leo's eyes. Her expression was utterly devoid of emotion. "Drop the weapon, or I will put a hollow point through your brainstem. You have 2 seconds," Sarah stated, her voice as cold as liquid nitrogen. 1. Leo dropped his gun like it was made of boiling iron. It clattered against the floorboards. He threw his hands into the air, his knees shaking so violently he almost collapsed. Trey, the getaway driver who had lingered by the front door, took one look at the carnage, turned, and bolted out the destroyed entrance, running for his life into the night. Inside, the tableau was frozen. The 3 remaining fake cops were disarmed, immobilized, and staring down the barrels of actual firearms wielded by the people they thought were easy prey. Jordan lay on his back, gasping for air, staring up at Marcus. The intimidating patriarch of the Bell family looked down at him with a mixture of professional disgust and deep pity. Who the hell are you people?" Jordan wheezed, blood trickling from his lip where Marcus had struck him. Marcus reached into his back pocket with his free hand. He pulled out a leather trifold wallet and flipped it open, dropping it onto Jordan's chest. The shiny gold badge of the Federal Bureau of Investigation gleamed under the dining room lights, accompanied by a heavy, laminated photo, ID. "I'm Supervisory Special Agent Marcus Bell," Marcus said, his voice echoing in the quiet room. "The woman aiming a gun at your friend is Special Agent Sarah Bell, Cyber Division. The young man kneeling on your other friend's neck is Special Agent David Bell, fresh out of Quantico. You didn't just kick in the wrong door, son. You kicked in the worst door in the United States of America." Jordan stared at the gold shield on his chest, his mind simply short-circuited. The sheer, monumental scale of his mistake crashed down on him like an anvil. He hadn't just targeted a federal agent, he had targeted a family of them. He had initiated an armed raid on the commanding officer of a violent crimes task force. "Oh, God," Jordan whimpered, the reality of his situation destroying whatever tough guy facade he had left. "Oh, my God." "You have the right to remain silent," David recited clearly, keeping his knee firmly on Mike's neck. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." "Save the Miranda for the uniforms, David," Marcus said, not taking his eyes off Jordan. "Right now, I want these clowns zip-tied and facing the wall." Within 90 seconds, Jordan, Mike and Leo were lying face down on the dining room rug, their hands securely bound behind their backs with the heavy-duty plastic zip ties Marcus kept in his duty bag by the door. The silence in the house was absolute, save for the pathetic, muffled sobs of Leo, who was crying into the carpet. "You guys really thought you were something, didn't you?" Sarah said, walking over and kicking the cheap plastic shotgun out of reach. She looked at Jordan's fake FBI vest. "Where did you even get this? Party City. The stitching is atrocious." "We're sorry," Jordan babbled, his face pressed against the floor. "Man, we didn't know. We swear to God we thought you were just a CEO. We'll give you everything. Just let us go. Please, man to man, give us a break." Marcus let out a short, harsh laugh. He pulled up a dining chair and sat down backward, resting his arms on the backrest, looking down at the trio of defeated criminals. "A break?" Marcus asked quietly. "You kicked in my front door with loaded weapons. You pointed a firearm at my wife. You threatened my son. You impersonated federal officers to commit a home invasion. Let's do some quick math on your immediate future." Marcus held up his fingers, counting off the charges. "Impersonating an officer of the United States, that's 3 years. Armed home invasion, that's 20. Aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, another 10. Conspiracy to commit federal robbery, let's add another 5. And because you decided to wear those cute little fake vests, I'm going to make sure the US Attorney tacks on domestic terrorism enhancements just for the headache you've caused the Bureau's Public Relations Department." Jordan squeezed his eyes shut as the numbers rained down on him. Decades. They were looking at decades in federal prison. "As for your getaway driver," David added, checking his phone, "Mum's panic button triggered a geofence. Local PD just intercepted a white cargo van 2 miles from here. They've got him." "You're all going to Leavenworth," Sarah stated simply. "And the best part is when you get there and they ask what you're in for, you're going to have to tell the entire cell block that you tried to fake raid the home of the FBI violent crimes commander and got disarmed by his family before the appetizers got cold." Suddenly, the low, throbbing sound of heavy engines filled the street outside. Red and blue strobes began to pulse furiously through the shattered front doorway, painting the walls of the foyer in frantic colours. The wail of sirens, previously distant, abruptly cut off as vehicles swarmed the property. The real professionals had arrived. Heavy tactical boots pounded up the driveway, flashlights cut through the darkness. WFOHRT, FBI, clear the path. A booming voice echoed from the porch. Marcus stood up, raising his hand slightly to show he was unarmed, standard procedure when tactical units enter a chaotic scene. Marcus Bell, SSA, house is secure. Hostiles are neutralized and bound on the floor. A team of 6 heavily armored operators from the FBI's elite hostage rescue team poured into the house. They moved like water, fluid, silent, and overwhelmingly lethal. They wore real tactical gear, carried real suppressed carbines, and possessed the terrifying competence that Jordan's crew had so pathetically tried to mimic. The lead operator, a massive man with night vision goggles pushed up on his helmet, swept the room, his weapon instantly locking onto the 3 men on the floor. He looked at Marcus, then at Sarah, then at David. "Boss," the operator said, his voice completely calm. "You hit the panic button." "We had some uninvited guests, Miller," Marcus said smoothly, gesturing to the floor. "They tried to serve a fake warrant." Operator Miller looked down at Jordan, noting the fake FBI vest and the cheap plastic zip ties binding his wrists. Miller let out a slow, heavy sigh of disbelief. He nudged Jordan's side with the toe of his combat boot. "Are you guys the dumbest criminals on the eastern seaboard, or just the unluckiest?" Miller asked the crying men. "A little bit of both, I think," Marcus replied. "Get them out of my dining room, Miller. They're bleeding on my wife's Persian rug." The next 2 hours were a whirlwind of federal procedure. The street was locked down, swarming with black SUVs and local police cruisers. Evidence response teams photographed the shattered door, bagged the fake weapons, and catalogued the fake vests. Jordan, Mike, and Leo were dragged out of the house in handcuffs, surrounded by real, heavily armed federal agents. As Jordan was shoved toward the back of an armored transport vehicle, he looked back at the house. Marcus Bell was standing on his porch, his arms crossed, watching them leave. There was no anger in Marcus's eyes, only the cold, unyielding certainty of the law. Hard karma had arrived, and it was wearing a badge. Inside the house, the adrenaline was finally beginning to fade. The Bell family sat in the living room, surrounded by the remnants of their interrupted evening. David was reholstering his weapon, shaking his head. "I still can't believe they walked into this house. The sheer statistical improbability of picking the one house on the block entirely populated by federal agents. Criminals rely on luck and intimidation," Sarah said, picking up a broom and starting to sweep up the wood splinters in the hallway. "They never factor in competence. It's their fatal flaw." Marcus walked into the living room, holding 3 fresh glasses of wine. He handed one to his wife and one to his son. "Well," Marcus sighed, taking a sip and looking at the ruined front door. "I guess I'm spending my Monday calling a contractor." He looked at David, a small, proud smile touching the corners of his mouth. "Your sweep on that shotgun guy. Your form was a little sloppy. You telegraphed the drop." David groaned, rolling his eyes. "Dad, I literally disarmed an armed home invader in less than 2 seconds." "I'm just saying," Marcus chuckled, clinking his glass against his son's. "There's always room for improvement. The Bureau demands excellence." The Bells laughed, the tension finally breaking. They had faced down violence, protected their home, and sent 4 dangerous men to federal prison, all before dessert. It was a hell of a story, one that would be told in the halls of the Hoover Building for decades to come. The legend of the fake cops who kicked in the wrong door, only to find the real wolves waiting inside. What an absolute disaster for those fake cops. They thought they were the predators, but they walked straight into a den of federal lions. This story is the ultimate example of hard karma, and why you should never judge a book or a house by its cover. Marcus Bell and his family showed exactly what real training and discipline look like under pressure. If you love this story of instant justice and insane plot twists, please hit that like button right now. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share this video with your friends so they can hear this crazy story too. And if you want more intense, dramatic stories of karma, survival, and real-life plot twists, make sure you subscribe and turn on those notification bells so you never miss an upload. What would you have done in the Bell family's shoes? Let me know in the comments below. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next one.